So let's talk about the house price data. What happens in the housing market? People have all sorts of ideas. People think the market goes up more in south than it does in the north. People think it crashes all the time. People think it goes up all the time. People think different things at different times. And sometimes we forget. When we're in a rising market, we forget it ever fell. When we're in a falling market, we forget it ever goes up. But the market does all those things, goes up and it goes down. This has nothing to do with politics. You might think it does just because of how this information came about. But what we're showing here is that a £10,000 house back in 1964, you can see here in the last 50 years, this property bought for £10,000 has gone up to £650,000 in 50 years. So who's planning to live another 50 years? I am, and I'm sure you are. Okay, so if you're planning to live for another 50 years, you can buy a house right now for £100,000. You know those houses up north, £100,000. And okay, in 50 years' time, we'll put a zero in here and zero in there, and we have a property worth £6.5 million in 50 years' time. And we go, that can't be right. Because that's what we normally do in our heads. It's like, oh, that can't be right. That's just crazy. But this is what happens in property. This means that £100,000 house is going to be 6.5 million in 50 years' time. How many of these houses do you want? What happens here, you can see the patterns. You can see Harold Wilson was in power for 6 years, and we had a growth average of 6% a year. Sort of just a little bit above what we normally model at. We'd model at 5%. So we've got 6% a year and then 45% over the whole period. So the house has gone up to 14,500. And then Edward Heath comes in for 4 years at 24% a year. Now people remember and they say, oh my God, at the start of the 70s, there was a massive crash. So people remember that. But what they don't remember is at the start of the 70s, there was a massive crash because they had to put the interest rates up. And the reason they put the interest rates up is to control the inflation because the inflation had gone crazy at 24% per annum. So yeah, there was a crash, which was realigning things because we'd have a massive growth. Harold Wilson, a couple of years at 7%. And then we got James Callaghan at 16% a year for 3 years. And then we got Margaret Thatcher at 12% for 11 years. And then we have a major flat period, literally for about 1% per annum for 7 years. And then we've got Tony Blair comes in. We've got 7 years of 12% growth. You can't really say it's a Labour or Conservative thing. It's not really because it's not really a political thing. It's just what happens. What happens in the markets. The reason I'm showing you this, you get a 6 to 8 years of relatively flat, and then you have 8 to 10 years of growth. So this one here, since 1957, property prices have risen on average by 11.3% per annum. Over here, we've got the north and the south divide. In the north of England, from 83 to 90, we have an increase of 107. And in the south of England, we've got 118 increase. But on the next decade, the north of England, only 19%, and south of England, 46%. But in the decade after that, north of England wins at 102%, and south of England, 75%. Over time, they go up at the same. Okay, so this little white line over here, it's your £3,800 house back in 1969. And you can see by 2010 being worth £175,000. Okay, so that's the white line here. That's what's happening to the house price. The black line here shows the percentage of change in each year in the housing market. So you can see it over here. So in the early 70s, when the inflation was really high and the interest rates were like 10 to 12%, okay, as an investor, that happens about 15 to 20 years. In the last 20 years, generally, we've seen low interest rates. On the long-term average, 2.21%. So 2.2%, sorry. We're now seeing the interest rates up. And that's obviously to correct the inflation. People are spending a lot of money in other things. So what they're doing is they're putting the cost of debt up. So you have to spend more money on the debt rather than spending it elsewhere. So that's the reason why the interest rates are going up. Now, as a landlord or as a property investor, it's not fun for the interest rates to be at 10%. But when the inflation is high, the property prices are going through the roof. So as long as you have a feel for this coming and you work with experts in this field, which would be world-class experts, brokers, you get a feel for this coming, and you get yourself in a 2-year or 5-year fixed, and everyone else feels the pain, you ride through it. And in the meantime, you have had booming house prices. In that 2 years over here, so we had 33% growth in one and 36% growth in the other. So your house compounded by 75% in value in 2 years. I would love for the base rate to be sky high for a couple of years. I'd love it. And I'll see it coming, I'll lock in the interest rates, and I'll be fine. And I'll get that level of growth throughout my portfolio. So once you understand it, you understand the economics, how they sit with it, is less scary. Great. Okay, let's learn some more about the house prices. So here, generally, what happens, in fact, let me show you a graph of the data. Let me show you, actually, I'm going to show you the map. When the market starts to rise, it first starts in London. And then it washes out into outer metropolitan, and then it goes to the southeast, and then East Anglia, and then over here, and then about 3 years down the line to the West and East Midlands. And then we've got 4 years around here, and then we've got 5 years over here in the northeast. Now, this is not an exact science. If we're looking at this column over here, 2010 to 2019, the Greater London is up 67%, washing out into the outer metropolitan at 54%. Then we've got East Anglia at 41%, and the outer southeast at 44%, and then southwest at 34%. Okay, so that's how it rises first. Then almost through the motorway network, first hits the towns and the cities, and then it washes out about a year later into the villages and the surrounding sort of area. Then it goes up north. So we've got the Midlands over here, and then we've got the East Midlands going up at the same time. Then we've got move up over here to the M62 corridor to the northeast and the northwest. So when you look at these patterns, there's, they sort of go up north. It's not an exact science, but you can see the ripple effect, how it's all going. We've got, going up north here, Newcastle would be up 5 years. So if the market pauses in London here, it doesn't pause for another 3 years over here, another 4 years over here, another 5 years over there. So it's really interesting to understand this. For example, let's take York over here. When it folds down in London at 10%, it doesn't fall over here in York for another 4 years. This gives you a feel of the market. It gives you a feel about how it all works. And it's really powerful. It's really powerful stuff to be able to see this.